What's up YouTube, I'm back with another great tutorial and this is what we're going to make today. Because many of you guys asked me to do a faster genre, I created the Hard Trance project with Ableton stock and Serum 2 only. If you like this kind of content, make sure you follow me on my socials, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Big thanks for the support on my last videos, that means a lot to me. And now let's jump into the project. So for this Hard Trance project we are at 156 BPM and in the key of A minor. And as you heard, I did a little beat switch after 8 bars in the arrangement, but we go through that later. Let's start with the low end. So the low end group sounds like this. So as you can hear, the kick is very punchy and we have the typical offbeat bass line. And the offbeat bass line here is very present with a lot of mid frequencies so that the offbeat bass line is able to cut through all the elements we're adding later in this track. And a powerful low end group is the foundation in these kind of genres. I started with a very punchy kick, which is sounding like this. And did a little bit of processing here, not too much, because I had the feeling the kick is already very well processed. I only added a EQ here with a low cut on 30 Hz with a 12 dB slope here. And I took out some frequencies around 166 Hz. Then I added a raw and boosted only the high to get a little bit more out of this transient in the kick sample. And then, of course, a utility in mono to avoid any phase issues. For the bass group, I created 2 bass layers. The first bass layer is focusing more on the mid and high frequencies. And the second bass layer is only adding a sub bass because I had the feeling that in the first bass layer is missing some sub bass. So I tuned in the second layer to have a more powerful bass line. And the way I did the first bass layer is in Serum. But as always, you can download the full project file, including all the samples and presets I used with the download link in the description. So for this bass line, I used the basic mini wavetable and shifted the phase around 46 degrees here, ran them all the way to 100. And then I applied the warp mode asymmetrical plus minus here, which is controlled by the envelope 1 here. And the envelope 2 is controlling the cutoff of the MG ladder filter here. Then I created a LFO in envelope mode. You can also use envelope 3, but I changed the rate to 2.7 Hz here. And with the LFO1, I also controlled the cutoff here. So the envelope 1 here is very important because it controls the cutoff more than the envelope 2 does. And that causes that transient and that clicky sound in the bass line. So for example, when I bypass the LFO1, you can hear that click sound is missing. And when I activate it, it gets all the power in the mid frequencies. And that's important because otherwise the bass will get lost in the mix. For the FX section, I added a boat. I added a boat effect to give the bass more body. Then an equalizer to boost the lows and took out some of the mids here. Then I added a multi-band compressor and boosted certain frequencies. Then I added a phaser to add more texture and movement to the bass sound. Then I added a reverb, but it's all the way to 0 here. It's a taste decision. For me, it sounds good without the reverb. Then I added another compressor to smooth things a little bit out here. And after that, a distortion to add even more texture and dirtiness to the bass sound. And at the end, I decided to use a delay because I had the feeling that the bass is more present when it has a bit of stereo information. But be very careful here. If you do a delay on a very subby bass line, it can destroy your whole mix. So be careful with that and use the filter type to cut out the low frequencies with the delay. So as I mentioned, I felt that the first bass layer has not enough sub information in it. So I added another bass layer with operator to add sub information to the first bass layer. I did that in operator with the square D wave form here, filtered it a little bit and took out all the frequencies above 129 Hz. And then I mixed the sub bass into the first bass layer. So -3 here sounds the best for me. And on the low end group, I added a glue compressor with a long attack time and a short release time and around 145 Hz. And because I had a bit of gain reduction, I boosted make up around 2 dB. And now the low end group sounds like this. Because this genre lives from the groove, I added a few head loops with a groove in it. So as you can hear, they are very groovy, and that's important to achieve the energy in the Hard Trance track. Second head loop, also very groovy. And then I added the typical open head. And in the first part of the track, which is more a build-up section, I added an open head loop into the simpler, but I changed the mode here to the arrow, to the right arrow, and reduced the envelope here so that every open head is a bit shorter. So I changed the decay time to reduce the power of the open head in the build-up section. And when the build-up section is done, the real open head starts, and the listener gets the feeling that there's more power in this in the drop. That's a little cool technique to have different power levels. So the open head loop with the reduced envelope sounds like this. Then I added a transition sound, which is sounding like this. And that's basically the head loop recorded and reversed. But it's always nice to do that as a transition sound because it builds tension to the listener. Then I added a distortion clap, which is sounding like this. And that's a really nice technique to add more dirtiness to your sound. And I built a clap crasher effect rack here. And that's very nice because you can load in any clap sample you want. This, for example, this one. And it instantly makes your clap distorted. And you can play around with the settings here. So it's a little time saver, but you can easily rebuild this effect by yourself, just adding a reverb and then an overdrive and a pedal to distort the sound. Took out the low frequencies and then map a shaper to the gain for the exact length that you want the clap to be distorted. For the beat switch, there's a second short clap playing that is layered with the kick drum to achieve a different group. And then I added a snare roll for the transition and filtered it a little bit out at the end. And yeah, let's listen to the drums in context. So the first transition. And in the second part. So the drum section is not that complex, but if you choose the right sounds and the right samples, you can achieve a lot only with a few samples. And that's what it's all about. Find good samples, create good samples, and the positioning of them to create movement and variations in your arrangement. So for the synth section, I created 3 presets in Serum. The main lead, which is sounding like this. So it's a very distorted, almost e-guitar synthesizer, and I use the default shape here, this time with the random all the way to 0. And I added a bit of unison. If you don't know what unison does, basically creates multiply voices. And when you look to the detune mode, you can see how much the both sounds are apart from each other. And when you increase all the way to 16, you have 16 sound layers of your sound. And there you can create very wide sounds. But for me, a unison 2 sounds the best here. Then I added a soft saturation for the warp mode. These are controlled by the envelope 1. And the envelope 1 also modulates the cutoff here of the band 24 filter to have a little bit of movement while the note is playing. Then I added noise to have more texture in the sound. And then I added a few effects. Distortion, of course, to have more texture in the sound. And a compressor, where I took out some of the mid frequencies and boosted the high and lows. Then a delay, nothing special here, reverb, and 2 EQs at the end to boost the highs a little bit and take out some of the mid frequencies. For the processing, I only added a raw here to boost a little bit of the highs and the mids on 40% of wetness. And then I EQ'd things out where I felt that the sound is too present or it lacks a little bit of frequencies. The second sound sounding like this. And it's basically the same synthesizer as the sound before, but I pitched it down at the end with the MIDI control pitch bend here. And then you can draw in your automation. If you want to achieve a bigger pitch down, you need to change the numbers here on the left corner of Serum 2. By default, it's -2 and +2 semitones. But if you want to pitch down your sound, for example, 1 octave, you need to change this value to -12 or +12 semitones. But for me, the -2 works well here, and that gives us a nice transition from the first section to the second section. The third sound here is a typical wave step. You can hear that a lot in these kind of productions. And this sound is very simple to make. Just add a saw wavetable here with 16 unison. So we have 16 different sounds here, and that's because the sound's sounding so wide. And then I added a filter with higher resonance, and then I added the LFO1 with on envelope mode again, which is controlling the pitch right here in the corner. And that's very important because when I bypass the pitch, you can hear the sound is very flat. And when we reactivate it, you get that typical pitch wave step. Then I added a few defects, hyperdimension to add even more whiteness, then a distortion to add more texture, the compressor on multiband to boost some of the highs and the lows, then an equalizer to take out some of the low frequencies, and a delay and the reverb after it. So it's a really easy but effective preset here. Then I created an acid sound in Serum for the second part, and here we have that typical call and response technique. So the acid lead here is the call, and then the second synth we created for the main lead sound is the response in this case. So the call and response is always a good decision when you have your first 8 bars and you don't know what to do next. Try to add a call and response for the second 8 bars loop, and then you have a good variation which keeps the listener listening to your song. And the way I did that acid sound also in Serum, here I added 2 wavetables. The first is the saw wave and the second one is the square wave. Shifted the phase of the first wavetable to 120 here and added a band plus-minus warp mode here and a asymmetrical plus-minus warp on the second wavetable. Then I did a very steep envelope 1 for the length of the sound, and then I created the envelope 2 to control the warp modes here a little bit and the cutoff. And the cutoff here is very important to achieve that acid sound. We need the band 24 filter with a very high resonance and a 100% drive, and then you achieve that scratchy, itchy acid sound. And then in the FX tab, I added a multiband compressor on -14.3 on the highs because the highs were too dominant here. And then I boosted a little bit of the mid and the lows. Added 2 distortion FX here. The first is focusing on 2000 Hertz and the second one is focusing on the 3000 Hertz area. And then I added a hyperdimension effect to add more distortion and whiteness. And at the end, an equalizer to boost some of the highs we took out at the beginning. And add a simple delay after it to add even more whiteness to the sound. So that's the synth group. And on the second part, for the vocals, I used the technique to change my own voice to a female voice. I will upload a short video to explain you how I did that soon. And the vocals sounding like this.
Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass.
Let me turn off the effects here so that you can hear each step. This is the war vocal.
Hit me with a bass.
I added the auto shift effect here to modulate the formant here in the transition sound.
Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass.
Yeah, just pitch the vocals a little bit up to create a variation in the transition. Then I added EQ.
Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass.
Compressor.
Hit me with a bass.
Overdrive for distortion.
Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass.
Reverb.
Hit me with a bass.
And another EQ to smooth the things out.
Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass. Hit me with a bass.
And a delay at the end. What I did with the vocals in the second section of the track is that I added more vocal variations because we took out the main lead here. And with that, we achieved the same energy that we had before, but with a lot of variations here. We have the call and the response technique and more vocal steps so that the listener don't have the feeling that the energy is missing. And for the FX, nothing special here because we did all the variations with the drum section in this track, but I added a crash, which is sounding like this. And for the second transition, I added a tape effect. Okay, let's talk about the arrangement here. So as I mentioned, the first section is more of a build-up section. Then the main lead comes in, which is the main part of the song. And the third section is with the beat switch. And then we have the transition from the second to the third section. And in the last section, we changed the bass pattern from the typical offbeat bass line to this one. And because with the second bass pattern, we have a problem with the kick, because now the bass is playing while the kick is playing. And that's why I added a bass group with a sidechain compressor on it. And I told the compressor to duck when the kick is playing here. And then you can see every time the kick is playing, the bass gets reduced a little bit. And that's very important because otherwise the bass and the kick would clash here. Yeah, for the drums, I only added a short clap, as I mentioned, to support the groove of the kick. Yeah, and it really changed the groove of the drum section, so a very important step here. Then I added the drum fills, just to have some variation here. Yeah, we already talked about the call and response technique here, and we also talked about the vocals. Yeah, so I think you're good to go. So it's always the little decisions and the amount of the little decisions you took in your track and arrangement to bring your track on a professional level and to keep the listener listening to your music. And that's it for this project. I hope you learned a lot. And as always, I would love to read your comments and feedbacks in the comment section. If you like this video, make sure you follow me on my socials, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Now we will listen to the full track. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.